The year is 1470. Deep in the rugged mountains of Thessaly, a solitary bell rings one final time across a valley that will never hear its voice again. Inside the ancient convent of St. Catherine, 23 women kneel in solemn prayer. Their lips move in perfect unison, forming the sacred words they've spoken every morning for countless years. But this morning, the words taste profoundly different. Like ash, like farewell, like goodbye. Kyrie, eleison, they whisper. Lord, have mercy. But mercy is not coming. Outside the towering stone walls, the horizon bleeds crimson red. Not from sunrise, but from the banners of a mighty empire that has already swallowed kingdoms whole. The Ottoman army doesn't march. It flows like an unstoppable river of steel and fire, erasing everything in its path. Sister Alani, the abbess, clutches tightly a silver crucifix that has survived 3 generations. Her weathered hands tremble, but not from fear, from knowing, from certainty. She knows what's coming. They all do. What they don't know, what no one could possibly imagine, is that death would have been a mercy. Because what happened next wasn't written in any history book you studied in school. It was buried, erased, hidden beneath centuries of enforced silence until now. What the Ottomans did to these women wasn't just conquest. It wasn't just war. It was something far more calculated, more deliberate, more monstrous. Something that historians are only now beginning to uncover. The question isn't whether you can handle the truth. It's whether you're willing to remember it. If you've ever wondered why certain stories vanish from history while others are told again and again, you're in the right place. Here on Crimson Historians, we dig deep into the archives the world forgot. Missionary letters, Ottoman state records, testimonies buried in Vatican vaults. Every view, every like, every subscription helps us pull one more voice out of the darkness. Now, let's go back to that convent because the bell has stopped ringing and the doors are about to break. To understand what happened to these nuns, you need to understand the machine that consumed them. 17 years earlier, Constantinople had fallen. The jewel of Christendom, the city that had stood for over 1,000 years, gone in 53 days of cannon fire and blood. The Hagia Sophia was stripped of its crosses within hours, its mosaics plastered over, its bells melted down. Within a week, the call to prayer echoed from its domes, where Christian hymns had sung for 9 centuries. Sultan Mehmed II stood in the nave and declared it a mosque because he understood something most conquerors don't. You don't defeat a people by killing them. You defeat them by erasing who they were. The Ottomans conquered identity itself. They conquered memory. When Mehmed looked west, he saw wounds that refused to heal. Every church bell that still rang, every monastery that still stood, was proof the old world refused to die. Every nun who still prayed, in Latin, was a living reminder that faith could outlast armies. So the Sultan made a calculated decision. If they will not convert, they will disappear. Not through massacre. Massacre creates martyrs. Martyrs inspire resistance. Songs are written. Stories are told. The dead become immortal. No. The Ottomans had perfected something far more elegant. Erasure. By 1470, this strategy had been tested across the sprawling empire. Greek monasteries in Morea, Serbian convents in the Balkans, Armenian churches in Anatolia. They didn't burn them all. They converted some, abandoned others. But the pattern was always the same. First came the offer. Then came the silence. The convent of St. Catherine, perched on a hillside in Thessaly, far from any garrison or ally, was about to become another test case, another footnote in an empire's expansion. But these women didn't know they were footnotes. These weren't warriors. They were women who had spent their entire lives in silence and prayer. Their weapons were rosaries. Their armor was faith. Sister Eleni, the abbess, had been leading them for 12 years. Before that, she attended the sick in a village that no longer existed, swallowed by plague in 1448. She came to the convent not to escape the world, but to make sense of it. Sister Magdalena, 19, had taken her vows only 2 years before. Her hands still bore the calluses from her father's farm. She joined the convent after her family was killed in a raid. The convent was the only place she had felt safe since. Sister Theodorus, 70, had outlived 2 abbesses, an emperor, and more wars than she could count. She had stopped fearing death decades ago. "Death is just going home," she once told a younger sister. "It's what comes before death that frightens me." None of them had ever faced this. The first cannonball hits just after dawn. It doesn't strike the chapel. It strikes the bell tower. The sound is apocalyptic. Stone explodes violently into the air. Iron shrieks against iron. The bell that has rung every morning for 140 years shatters mid-swing, and the pieces rain down onto the courtyard where the sisters grow herbs for healing. The same hands that tended those plants now cover their ears. Trembling, blood seeping from where the sound has ruptured something deep inside. Sister Eleni doesn't scream. She stands tall, crucifix raised high, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Sisters, to me." She begins to sing. The Kyrie eleison, Lord have mercy. One by one, the others join her. 23 voices rising against the roar of an empire. Their voices crack with fear, with determination, with something that sounds like goodbye. But empires don't listen to songs. By midday, the gates are breached. Ottoman soldiers pour into the courtyard, not with swords drawn, with ledgers, quills, ink pots. They move through the convent like clerks, not conquerors, counting, recording, cataloging. Because to the Ottomans, these women aren't people. They're assets. Line items in a ledger, numbers to be tallied and transported. A translator steps forward, a Greek man who once lived in these hills. His voice shakes as he reads from a scroll, and you can hear the shame buried in every word. The self-loathing, the knowledge that he has become the instrument of his own people's destruction. By order of Sultan Mehmed II, all subjects of the conquered territories must submit to the authority of the Sublime. Those who convert will be granted protection. Those who refuse will face the consequences of rebellion. His hands tremble as he speaks. He cannot meet their eyes. Sister Eleni steps forward. Her face is calm, almost serene. But her eyes burn with something unbreakable. She speaks not to the soldiers, but to the translator in Greek, so clear that everyone understands. "Tell your Sultan that we have already given our lives to a king. We have nothing left to surrender." The officer in charge, a man named Hassan Pasha, whose name appears in Ottoman military records from the 1470 Thessalian campaign, doesn't respond with anger. He responds with something far more chilling, a smile, slow and knowing, because he knows something the nuns don't yet understand. "Brave words," he says softly in Turkish. "Let's see how long they last." The Ottomans have perfected the art of breaking people without killing them. That night, the women are locked inside their own chapel. No food, no water, just darkness and the sound of soldiers outside, laughing, eating, living, while they wait to see who breaks first. 2 sisters, younger ones from Corinth, begin to weep in the corner. Their sobs echo off the cold stone walls, raw and desperate. But Sister Magdalena, barely 20 years old, begins to whisper a psalm. Her voice is barely audible at first, just a tremor in the darkness. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Another voice joins her, then another. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Slowly the weeping stops. The darkness fills with their voices, defiant, trembling, alive. This is the moment the Ottomans underestimated them. These women had spent their entire lives preparing for suffering. Fasting, vigils in the cold, hours of silence. What the soldiers saw as torture, the nuns saw as their daily discipline. But Hassan Pasha is patient. He's seen this before. In Wallachia, in the ruins of Serbian monasteries where monks thought their faith would save them. Faith is like a candle, he once wrote in a letter to the Sultan, still preserved in the Topkapi Palace archives. It burns brightest just before it dies. On the second day, the doors open. A servant enters with bread and water. Real food, clean water. The smell of it fills the chapel, making their empty stomachs clench. He sets it down and leaves. The nuns stare at it. Their throats are dry, cracked, bleeding. Their stomachs hollow and aching. The younger sisters look to Eleni, desperation in their eyes. Sister Theodoris, the eldest, speaks first. Her voice is weak, but her will is iron. They want us to take it, to feel gratitude, to soften. Eleni nods slowly. Then we fast. But Abbess, one of the younger sisters whispers, her voice breaking. I'm so thirsty, I can't. You can, Eleni says gently, taking the girl's hand. We can. Together. They don't touch the food. By the third day, their lips are cracked and bleeding. Their hands shake. The younger sisters can barely stand, but they don't break. Hassan Pasha watches, impressed and frustrated. Something close to respect flickers across his face. But respect doesn't change strategy. On the third day, the doors open again. This time, it's Hassan himself. He speaks in Turkish, and the translator follows behind him like a shadow. You are not criminals. You are not enemies. You are simply mistaken. The Sultan is merciful. He offers you new lives, new names, protection. All you must do is speak the words. Silence. Or, he continues, his voice dropping lower, softer, more dangerous. You can come with us to Constantinople. There, the Sultan himself will hear your case. Perhaps he will be moved by your conviction. He pauses, lets the words settle. But the road is long, and the weak do not survive it. We lose prisoners on every journey. Disease, exhaustion. It would be such a shame. It's not a threat, it's a promise. Sister Eleni looks at her sisters. Some are barely conscious, their bodies shutting down. Some are praying with their eyes closed, lips moving soundlessly. She turns back to Hassan. When she speaks, her voice is barely a whisper, but it carries absolute certainty. We will walk. The smile returns to his face. Slow, satisfied. Good. We leave at dawn. That night, the nuns hold each other in the darkness. No one speaks, but Sister Magdalena begins to hum softly, a hymn they sang at Vespers. Her voice cracks with exhaustion, with fear, with love. One by one, the others join her. Outside, the soldiers hear it. Some of them pause, some of them look away, faces troubled. One of them, years later, will tell his grandson about the women who sang themselves to death, about how their voices haunted him until his own dying day. But that story will be forgotten too. For now, the hymn rises through the cracks in the chapel walls and drifts out into the night. A prayer, a plea, a declaration. We are still here. We are still ourselves. You cannot take that. They leave at dawn on the fourth day. 23 women, hands bound with rope, walking south toward the coast. No carts, no horses, just their feet in the dust and the sun that shows no mercy. The soldiers don't rush them. They don't need to. The road itself is the punishment. By the second day, Sister Irene collapses. She's 62. Her knees have been failing for years. She tries to stand, pushing against the earth with trembling hands, but her legs won't hold her. "Please," she gasps. "I just need a moment." The soldiers don't wait. Sister Magdalena and Sister Anna lift her between them without hesitation. They carry her for 3 miles, their own bodies screaming with exhaustion. When they stop for the night, Irene is unconscious, her breathing shallow. By morning, she's gone, her hand still clutching her rosary. They bury her by the roadside with their bare hands. No tools, no ceremony, just dirt and whispered prayers. The soldiers watch. They don't stop them. Hassan Pasha makes a note in his ledger. 22 remaining. On the 4th day, Sister Callista, who hasn't spoken since the siege, simply stops walking. She sits down in the middle of the road, closes her eyes, and doesn't get up. "Sister Callista!" Magdalena cries, rushing to her. "Sister, please!" But Callista doesn't respond. Her face is peaceful. She has made her choice. They leave her there. By the time they reach Volos 7 days later, only 18 remain. Something happened on that road. Something the Ottomans didn't anticipate. The nuns stopped weeping, stopped begging. They walked in silence. But it wasn't the silence of defeat. It was the silence of women who had already made their choice. The silence of surrender to something greater than their captors could comprehend. Sister Alani had been walking at the front of the line, leading them even with her hands bound. But on the morning of the 7th day, Hassan calls for her. She's brought to his tent alone. What happens next isn't described in Ottoman records. It's described in a letter from a Venetian merchant who witnessed the aftermath. A letter discovered in 2003 in the archives of Dubrovnik. He writes, and you can feel the horror in his words. "I saw them bring her back at dawn. She could not walk. 2 soldiers carried her between them like a broken doll. Her eyes, God forgive me for what I saw. Her eyes were open, but she was not inside them anymore. They dressed her in silk, like a bride, and paraded her through the camp as a convert. But when I passed close, I heard her lips moving. She was still praying in Latin, silently. Libera me, Domine. Deliver me, Lord." She had not broken. They had simply taken her body and left her soul to wander. This is the Ottoman strategy that history doesn't teach you. They didn't want martyrs. Martyrs inspire resistance. Songs are written, stories are told. The dead become saints, their names passed down through generations. They wanted ghosts, women who would walk, talk, eat, breathe, but would never be whole again, living proof that rebellion was futile, living warnings to anyone who thought faith could stand against empire. Sister Alani walked with them the rest of the way to the coast, but she never spoke again, never looked anyone in the eye. She was there, but she wasn't. The sisters would reach for her hand, and she would let them hold it. But there was no response, no recognition, no Ilani left inside. The younger sisters wept when they saw her. Great, wrenching sobs that tore from their chests. The older ones just prayed harder, their voices more urgent, more desperate. At Volos, they're loaded onto a galley, a massive warship with rows of benches and chains bolted to the wood. This is a vessel designed for control, for breaking the will. The nuns are chained to the benches, wrists locked to iron rings. A ship's manifest discovered in 1987 in Istanbul's Topkapi Palace Museum lists them not by name, but by number. Religious captives, female 18, destination imperial household purpose, domestic service, and conversion. That word service is doing a lot of work. The voyage lasts 12 days. Storms lash the deck. Salt spray stings their cracked lips. The ship pitches and rolls, and the women who have never seen the ocean vomit until there's nothing left. At night, Sister Magdalena whispers psalms beneath her breath. Her voice is faint, barely audible over the crashing waves. Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. Other prisoners, Greeks, Serbs, Italians, chained beside them, turn to listen. One man begins to weep. I had forgotten there was anything worth praying for. For a moment, the sea seems to still. When the ship enters the Bosphorus, Constantinople rises before them. Domes, minarets, walls that seem to stretch forever. The city gleams in the dawn light like a blade. For centuries, it had been called the city of the world's desire. Now, it would become their cage. From the docks, they march through narrow streets. People stop to stare. Christian nuns among the captives are rare. Whispers follow them. Look at them. Still alive? They're led past ancient walls, through the imperial district, past gardens where fountains sing. In the shadow of Hagia Sophia, they're forced to kneel as the call to prayer echoes. One sister whispers, "We are home, but it is no longer ours." They're taken beneath the palace, down stone steps spiraling into darkness, to a place that doesn't officially exist. If you're still watching, it's because part of you knows this story needs to be told. Subscribe to Crimson Historians, not for us, but for them, for the voices that were swallowed by silence. Now, let's follow them into the dark. Beneath Topkapi Palace, there's a network of tunnels that tourists never see. Storage rooms, servant quarters, forgotten corridors that wind through the bedrock like veins. And in the farthest corner, sealed off for centuries, a room with no official purpose. A room that wasn't supposed to exist. In 2011, during restoration work, archaeologists broke through a false wall. What they found stopped them cold. One of them dropped his tools. Another made the sign of the cross, even though he hadn't been to church in years. Scratched into the stone, barely visible, were crosses. Dozens of them. Small, crude, carved with fingernails or shards of broken pottery. Each one a prayer, each one a scream, each one proof that someone had been here, suffering, hoping, refusing to disappear. And beneath those crosses, etched in Latin, 4 words: Lux in tenebris lucet. The light shines in the darkness. This was their chapel. For months, maybe years, these women lived beneath the palace. By day, they worked as silent servants. By night, they gathered in this room and prayed. They had no priest, no altar, no Bible. Just memory. They recited psalms from recall, sang hymns in whispers, held communion with stolen bread and water. They carved their faith into stone, knowing no one would ever see it. Sister Magdalena was among them. The girl who whispered psalms on the ship, who carried Sister Irene, who refused to look away. She became their voice in the dark. The archaeologists found her mark, a small bird. Beside it, 23 lines for each sister. Only 11 were complete. They used broken pottery for candles, linen scraps for altar cloths, mirror shards for a cross. Each night they gathered, sharing memories in whispers. Home, church bells, bread before dawn. These memories became their psalms. A Venetian prisoner in 1478 wrote of strange voices echoing beneath the harem. Women singing in Latin to a god not of this empire. For centuries, historians dismissed it until they found the chapel. The crosses stop halfway through the wall, the scratches become desperate. Then nothing. Ottoman records from 1482 mention a cleansing of palace staff. Anyone resistant was removed. One line, disposed. The nuns of St. Catherine vanished. 18 women who walked 7 days through hell, crossed the sea in chains, carved prayers in darkness. Gone. In 2011, archaeologists found traces of wax mixed with herbs, the kind nuns made. They kept their vigil for years, carving crosses, whispering prayers, refusing to disappear. Sister Magdalena's bird was the last mark. Beside it, 2 words in Greek: we endure. They left something empires couldn't erase: a room of crosses, a prayer in stone, proof that faith survived where walls and chains could not. The Ottoman Empire lasted 600 years, but it was those scratches that survived. Not the Sultan's decrees, not Hassan Pasha's ledgers, not the silk they dressed Alani in. Just 4 Latin words carved by women the world forgot. Lux in tenebris lucet. The light shines in the darkness. This story matters because it's about what power does when it tries to erase people, and what happens when those people refuse to disappear. The Ottomans conquered 3 continents, rewrote cultures, turned the greatest cathedral into a mosque. But they couldn't erase 18 women who scratched prayers into stone. An empire with armies against women with fingernails and faith. The women won, not in the way empires measure victory, but they left a mark. History is written by victors. Memory is written by survivors. Sometimes survival looks like a cross carved in darkness, a prayer whispered in a silenced language, a bird scratched in stone. Centuries later, we found it. These women walked 7 days, knowing they might not survive. They crossed the sea in chains. They descended into tunnels, knowing they might never see sunlight again. But they carved their prayers anyway, trusting someone would find them. You just did. In 2011, archaeologists stood in that chapel and asked, how long did they keep the vigil? The evidence suggests years. Night after night in darkness, refusing to stop believing. Even when sisters disappeared, even when hope should have died, they kept carving. That's defiance in its purest form. The Ottoman Empire dissolved in 1922. Its sultans are dust. The palace is a museum now. Tourists walk its halls, unaware of what lies beneath. But those crosses remain. That Latin phrase still speaks after 500 years. Lux in tenebris lucet. Sister Magdalena carved those words, knowing she would never leave, knowing her name would be forgotten, knowing the world would move on. But she carved them anyway, because she understood. You can conquer land. You can erase names. You can bury bodies. But you cannot kill what people carry inside them. You cannot silence what they carve into stone. You've just witnessed one of history's darkest truths. If stories like this remind you how easily voices can be erased, subscribe to Crimson Historians. Some voices deserve to be heard, especially those silenced centuries ago. The nuns of St. Catherine were meant to disappear, but they're still here in those crosses, in that Latin phrase, in the chapel archaeologists found 500 years later. They're here with you because you listened, because you refused to let their silence be the final word. Lux in tenebris lucet. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. If this story moved you, subscribe for more forgotten histories. Every subscription helps uncover another buried truth, another silenced voice. Join us in keeping their memory alive, because this is how we fight erasure. This is how we say, you were here, you mattered, we remember.